The Plaguekeeper's Contagion. I'll never forget the night they turned on me. It was just another family dinner, the kind where laughter fills the air like a warm embrace. But when I brought up the research I'd been passionate about, the connection between folklore and infectious diseases, the room fell silent and the warmth turned to ice. My father, with his booming voice that once filled me with pride, now dripped with disdain. Folkloric epidemiology, he scoffed, his fork clattering against his plate. You're losing your mind, aren't you? Chasing shadows and fairy tales like some lunatic in a horror story. You'll disgrace this family. My mother chimed in, her voice a sharp whisper. You're obsessed, dear. It's unhealthy. You need to let it go before it consumes you. The others nodded, their eyes filled with pity, not for me, but for themselves, for being related to someone they deemed insane. But what they didn't understand was that this obsession was born from trauma. The scapegoating incident at the facility had left me hollow, an empty vessel marked by failure. I'd been accused of endangering lives, of being a reckless scientist. And when the dust settled, I had been thrust into the shadows of disgrace. It was in those dark corners, among tales of cursed lands and diseases that possessed the very souls of the afflicted, that I found solace. I became the Plaguekeeper, a title that echoed with both dread and fascination. Years passed. I delved into the stories that the world deemed laughable, the legends of the Hound of Dartmoor, the whispers of the Wailing Woman of the moors, and the tales of the lethargy curse that swept through villages like wildfire. Each narrative held a thread of truth, a dark tapestry woven with the strands of reality and myth. And as I unraveled them, I began to understand the contagions that lay hidden beneath the surface, a world that transformed its victims in ways that medicine could never explain. Then came the day of my return home, a journey tinged with the bittersweet taste of vindication. I walked through the door, not as the disgraceful son they remembered, but as a renowned expert in the field, my name whispered in hushed tones across academic circles. I had survived what they could not even begin to comprehend. I had faced the darkness and emerged with knowledge that would make their skin crawl. "What do you want?" my father barked, his voice a mixture of hostility and confusion. My mother's eyes widened, not with joy, but with fear, as if she sensed the shadows that followed me. "I'm here to show you," I replied, my voice steady, though I felt the weight of their disbelief pressing on my chest. "I'm here to show you what you mocked." At first, they laughed nervously, thinking it a joke, but I had come prepared. I opened my briefcase and revealed the artifacts, a tattered journal filled with sketches of forgotten places, photographs of victims marked by the contagions I had studied, and small vials containing samples of the very essence of these folklore-inspired diseases. "Look closer," I urged, holding up the vials. "This is what you called delusional. This is what you ridiculed." I noticed their expressions shift from amusement to something more profound, a dawning realization that perhaps I wasn't the lunatic they thought I was. But before they could voice their fears, the air grew thick, and the shadows in the corners of the room began to writhe. "Please, you don't understand," my mother pleaded, her voice trembling. "We were only trying to protect you." But as I began to recount the tales I had uncovered, the room darkened further. The stories came alive, the curses I had studied taking form around us. I spoke of the lethargy curse, how it turned its victims into hollow shells. And as I did, I saw my father's eyes glaze over. He stumbled back, clutching his chest, as if the very essence of the curse had latched onto him, a parasite feeding on his disbelief. "Stop it!" he shouted, but his voice was weak, swallowed by the encroaching shadows. The shadows danced like specters, swirling around him, whispering secrets of the darkness he had mocked for so long. My mother reached out, desperation etched across her face. "This isn't real! You're scaring us!" But I could only watch as the curse took hold, her denial fueling its strength. As the shadows tightened their grip, I felt a surprising pang of sympathy. They had never believed in the things I dedicated my life to understanding. They had laughed at my attempts to uncover the truth, never knowing how close to reality those tales had been. "Maybe now you'll understand," I murmured, watching as their surroundings twisted into a nightmarish landscape, a fusion of reality and folklore, a manifestation of their own fears brought to life. They were drowning in their disbelief, and I couldn't save them. In that moment, I realized my triumph was not just in my survival, but in the vivid, terrible truth that I had exposed. I had become the embodiment of the stories I once chased, a harbinger of the darkness that lurked beneath the surface of our understanding. As daylight faded outside, I turned to leave, the weight of my family's disbelief hanging heavy in the air. I stepped into the night, leaving them to face the horrors of their own making. The echoes of their laughter faded behind me, replaced by the chilling whispers of the shadows I now commanded. I had returned, not just as a son, but as a warning, a dark reflection of what had been dismissed, a reminder that the price of ridicule could be far more than anyone could imagine. The world may have feared what I uncovered, but my family would now understand that belief in the unseen could come at a terrible cost. And as I walked away, I could almost hear them screaming, their voices swallowed by the very darkness they had dismissed.